The train came late into Canyon Edge, wheels shrieking like a thing injured. Smoke hissed, steam rolled out beneath the carriages, and a few tired passengers stepped down with the heavy silence of people expecting disappointment. No one came to meet them. The station sat quiet and skeletal on the far end of the desert, just a sun-bleached bench, a bent iron clock, and a cracked sign swinging in the wind. He was already there, sitting under the clock's crooked shadow, the brim of his hat pulled low, boots caked in dust. They called him Cole Maddox in town, though some used his name like a curse. 6'1", all flint and bone, with a face carved by loss and years of windburn. His wife, Marybeth, had died 2 springs ago, childbirth gone wrong in the cabin they'd built together. She took the baby with her. Since then, he'd spoken only when necessary, drank just enough to keep his grief nailed down, and rode the range with a look in his eyes that warned even the cruel men to keep clear. He didn't know why he'd come to the station, said it was to pick up a shipment of tack from Abilene, but there was no crate, no name called, just the scrape of boots and the breathless sound of something waiting to happen. That's when she stepped off the train, or rather was pushed. She hit the dirt with a heavy sound, like a sack dropped too hard. Her valise came next, skidding open, bloomers and hairpins scattering in the dust. The conductor barely glanced back before climbing up again. No one helped her. The train let out one last warning screech and pulled away, leaving her in the grit and heat. She sat there for a minute, arms wrapped around herself, skirts bunched at her knees. Then she began to gather her things in silence. Cole hadn't moved, just watched. She wasn't a girl, maybe late 20s. Brown eyes that looked dark enough to drink and shoulders set like someone used to being stared at for all the wrong reasons. Her dress was a little too tight at the seams, her bodice straining. She was big, not just tall, but thick, heavy, round in the hips and soft in the arms. She had the look of a woman who'd been promised something and got nothing in return. He stood when she tried to lift the valise and failed. "You waiting on someone?" he asked, voice like rusted iron. She looked up. Her face was red from the heat, eyes ringed with sweat and shame. "Was," she said, "not anymore." He took off his hat then, slow, the way a man might at a gravesite. "What's your name?" She hesitated, chest rising and falling like it hurt. "Beulah," she said. "Beulah Carrington, least it was supposed to be." "Supposed to be." "I was to marry a man here. He saw my picture, sent fair, said he didn't mind a big woman, said he wanted something real." Cole let that hang in the air. "Guess he changed his mind," she added, voice flatter now. "Conductor said he watched him see me from the platform, got back on the train before it stopped." Cole spat in the dust. "Coward," he muttered. Beulah straightened, lips pressing together. She didn't cry. Just stood there with her things half packed, dignity bleeding out into the dirt. He didn't think, didn't weigh the choice like a man ought to. Just saw the hollow place in her face and the same ache he carried. "I got a cart tied up behind the livery," he said. "You hungry?" Beulah blinked. "You don't have to." "I know," he cut in, still asking. She paused, eyes flicking over him. "Why?" He looked out past the station to where the land rolled dry and endless. "Because this place is full of men who take one look and walk away," he said. "But I ain't walked out on a soul that needed me, not once." That night he fed her stew in silence, lit a lantern in the little cabin he still couldn't sleep in and gave her the bed. He sat on the porch all night smoking. The moon came up hard and white, and the coyotes howled in the distance. Just after midnight he got up, walked back inside, and stood at the foot of the bed. "I'm gonna marry you," he said. Beulah sat up slow. "What?" "You need a place. I need a reason not to drink myself to death. It don't have to be love, but it can be something close." She stared at him like he'd spoken another language. "You serious?" Cole nodded once. Sun'll be up in 4 hours. We can be at the preacher's before heat sets in. And because her whole life had been filled with men who said no and meant it, and here was one saying yes like it cost him nothing, Beulah Carrington nodded and lay back down, hands folded over her chest like she was already trying to remember what it meant to rest. By dawn, they were married. Just the preacher, two witnesses from the boarding house, and the smell of sweat and roses from an old bush growing behind the chapel wall. By noon, they were husband and wife in a town that would not forget it. By dusk, someone had painted "Whore Marriage" on Cole's barn. By midnight, Cole had beaten a man bloody behind the saloon. And Beulah stood at the edge of her new field, dress clinging to her thick arms, watching her husband wipe the blood from his knuckles with the same tenderness he once used on a crying foal. She didn't speak, didn't thank him, but she stayed. And in Canyon Edge, that meant everything. The wind came in from the west 2 days after the wedding, dry and sharp, rattling through the cottonwoods like bones. Beulah tied her hair back with a strip of old muslin and worked the pump until her arms ached. The water came up slow, brackish, and she didn't complain. She'd slept in the bed again, this time with Cole beside her, both of them facing the ceiling like strangers at a wake. He hadn't touched her, not even with the back of his hand. She didn't know what to make of that. By the end of the week, the townsfolk had grown quiet around them, not because they approved, but because they were waiting. They watched her when she passed, eyes trailing over the seams of her dress, the swing of her hips, the flush in her cheeks. Children whispered. Women clutched their shawls a little tighter. Men spat and turned their faces. Cole didn't care. He walked beside her like she was carved from marble, like there was no shame in loving something solid. And though Beulah didn't love him, not yet, there were moments it caught in her throat like the start of a song she hadn't learned the words to. The first real trouble came from the Caldwells. Rafe Caldwell owned 3,000 acres and a face like a chewed boot. He'd courted Marybeth once, years before Cole, and never quite forgave being passed over for a man who had nothing but calloused hands and a promise. When he heard Cole had married again, and to a woman like that, he rode up the hill with his 2 sons and a flask full of spite. Cole was splitting wood behind the cabin. Beulah saw them first. She stood on the porch, flour on her hands, her apron tied crooked. "Maddox," Rafe called, reins tight in one hand. "Heard you done lost your damn mind." Cole didn't look up. "Married yourself a heifer," one of the sons laughed. "You gonna breed her too, or just fatten her for winter?" Beulah didn't flinch. She stood straight, shoulders locked, like she'd been called worse by men with cleaner boots. Cole set the axe down, walked out to the yard. "You ride up my land to spit filth, Rafe." The old man shrugged. "You made a joke of your name, just figured we'd come see it for ourselves." "You seen it," Cole said. "Now get the hell off my dirt." The second son, the younger one with the gold tooth, smirked. "Don't know why you're so testy. Thought maybe you married her for the shade she throws." Cole's fist landed fast, broke the boy's nose with a crunch. He went down without a sound. The horse skittered. Rafe drew his pistol halfway before Beulah shouted, "You pull that gun, I swear to Christ I'll gut your horse and leave it for buzzards." The words came raw, low, not the scream of a panicked woman, but the promise of someone who'd been cornered too many times. The knife in her hand wasn't big, just a kitchen blade, but it gleamed like lightning in her grip. Rafe stared at her. Beulah didn't blink. The old man backed his horse up slow. The older son reached down for the one on the ground, dragging him limp into the saddle. They left without another word. That night, Cole brought her wildflowers in a tin mug, set them on the table without comment. She watched them for a while, then reached over and touched the scar on his forearm, the one from the knife fight in Santa Rosa. Her fingers were cool, careful. Why'd you do it? She asked. Why marry me for real? Cole stared at the fire a long while before answering. "'Cause every man I know picks the easiest thing," he said, "and I got tired of easy turning to rot." Beulah didn't say anything. Instead, she stood and went to the bed first that night, left the door open behind her, the way Maribeth never had. The next morning, the preacher's wife came by with a jar of quince jam and a fake smile. "I hear y'all had a little dust-up," she said, eyes darting to Beulah's hips, then to her face. "Men can be awful creatures." Beulah didn't answer, just offered coffee and a seat, though the woman didn't sit. The wife cleared her throat. "I run the church social, and we're always looking for new hands. Lord knows we can't be picky, what with folks moving out of town and the dust ruining the wheat. You sow, Mrs. Maddox." "No," Beulah said. "Cook, then." Beulah looked out the window. "I kill chickens with a brick, that count." The woman blinked, pink lips pressed tight. Beulah stepped forward, calm. "I know why you're here. You want to see if I'll bow my head and apologize for not being pretty, for not being shy, for making you all feel like marriage is something anyone could earn, not just the slim and clean." The preacher's wife shifted, holding the jam jar too tightly now. "You want to know if I'll hide, if I'll try to be small for your comfort." She leaned close, her breath was steady. "I won't." The jar was set down harder than necessary. "I'll tell the girls you're not interested," the wife said, turning fast. Beulah didn't reply, just watched her leave, shoulders square. Behind her, Cole stepped in from the barn. He'd heard it all. "You do so," he said. Beulah looked back. "I know." "Why lie?" She thought about it. "Because I don't want their charity," she said. "I want respect, and that don't come free." Cole nodded. "Good," he said. That was the day they started fencing the north lot together. Hands raw, lips chapped, shirts soaked with sweat. They barely spoke, but when the last post went in and the wire sang between them, they looked at each other for a long moment. And there was something else in that look. Not love, not yet, but gravity, pull, the shape of something growing deep under the surface. In the following weeks, things shifted. A woman from the boarding house came by for a recipe. A boy with a limp offered to mend their door in exchange for supper. Old man Darnell left them eggs without asking for coin. But the Caldwell boys weren't done, not by half. And Beulah knew enough of men like them to recognize when a storm was just over the ridge, waiting. She started sleeping with that kitchen knife beneath her pillow. And when she kissed Cole, finally, it was not soft. It was not gentle. It was the kiss of someone who'd lost too much already to pretend that tenderness was ever safe. Summer came hard to Canyon Edge. The earth cracked open like a wound. Buzzards circled lower by the day. Crops shriveled. Wells went shallow. Men lost their tempers in the street. Beulah kept close to the house, washing linens with rainwater they'd saved in barrels, eyes always on the horizon. Cole rode north once a week now, up past Dry Creek, where cattle still had graze and the wind wasn't so bitter. He was gone 3 days at a time. Those nights, Beulah sat with a rifle across her lap and her boots still on, waiting for a noise that might not come. One did. Second night of his absence, just after moonrise. A knock, not at the door, but at the back of the cabin, low and slow, 3 taps like a code. Beulah didn't move. The knock came again. She stood, picked up the rifle, thumbed back the hammer. The windows were dark, the lamps doused. "Whoever you are," she said, loud enough to carry, "I'll shoot first and ask names when they're carving your stone." A voice answered, young, slurred. "It's just a joke, ma'am." She stepped out the back door into the dust. Nothing moved, but she could smell it, sweat, horse, and that awful tang of whiskey. Show yourself. A figure stepped from the edge of the shed, the younger Caldwell. His face was still bruised where Cole had broken him. Evening, he said. She raised the rifle to her shoulder. Step any closer, and I'll spread your thoughts in the dirt. He grinned, but it wobbled. Wasn't gonna touch you, ma'am. Just figured I'd take a look. Cole Maddox's cow bride live and in the flesh. Heard tell you're meaner than him. You heard right. He spat, don't see the appeal myself. Man must be desperate. Beulah didn't answer. He took a step back, hands raised like mock surrender. Don't get your bloomers bunched. I was just curious. Never seen a woman worth less treated like she's gold. Now you have, she said. Go tell your daddy I ain't afraid of maggots with boots on. The boy laughed, bitter and breathy. I'll tell him, and he'll come see for himself. Beulah didn't shoot, not that night. But when Cole came back the next evening, she met him at the fence with the rifle slung over her back and her jaw tight. We've got vermin, she said. He nodded. The next week passed without incident, but it was a silence too clean to be real. Cole kept his revolver loaded on the mantel. Beulah carried her knife when she fetched eggs. They moved like two people in the last chapter of a storm, waiting for the last tree to snap. It came on a Sunday. They were in the field, mending a fence where coyotes had chewed through. Cole was bent at the post, Beulah beside him, sleeves rolled to the elbow, dress smeared with dirt. Shots rang out from the trees. The first bullet took out the fence post. The second hit the ground near Cole's boot. They hit the dirt fast, rolling for cover behind a hay wagon. From the tree line, three figures moved, Rafe and his boys, rifles in hand. Thought we'd help with the landscaping, Rafe shouted. Cole fired once, clipped bark. You want to die here, Rafe, he called. You want to die over a grudge from 15 years ago. I want you humbled, the old man shouted. I want that woman crawling back to the station where she belongs. Beulah crawled to the wagon axle, unlatched the latchbox beneath. Inside was the scattergun Cole used on foxes. She grabbed it, hands steady. Rafe, she called. A pause. I ain't yours to humiliate, and I sure as hell ain't yours to scare. He didn't answer. She stood fast, leveled the shotgun over the wheel well, and fired. The blast sent birds screaming out of the trees. One of the boys yelped, hit, maybe grazed. Next shot takes out a throat, she shouted. You got one gun, Rafe called. We got three. Cole's voice came low and lethal. You're on my land. And what of it? Cole stood too, revolver in one hand, rope in the other. You leave now, I won't gut you like pigs. Rafe stepped out. You think you can talk to me like that, boy? Cole smiled. No, but she can. Beulah was already walking. Straight out from the wagon, shotgun still warm in her hands, eyes locked. She didn't speak. She just kept walking, the way she had when the conductor pushed her off the train, the way she had when the preacher's wife tried to shame her, the way she had when she'd kissed a man who hadn't asked for beauty but saw it anyway. The older Caldwell boy flinched. Beulah stopped 10 feet from Rafe. You come to my house again, she said, and I'll put you down like the rabid thing you are. You'll die in the dirt with your name forgotten and your sons blamed for your rot. Rafe opened his mouth, closed it, then spat and turned. The three of them left slow, like men pretending they weren't running. That night, Cole poured her a drink. You scared the devil out of him, he said. I am the devil, she said, half smiling. They drank by the fire, wordless, until the bottle was empty and her head was on his shoulder. He kissed her hair once, and for the first time since Maribeth's funeral, he dreamed of a future with no ghosts in it. The drought cracked open everything. Earth hearts, even the bones of men too proud to beg for rain. Beulah planted onions anyway, deep, defiant rows in the northern patch where soil stayed dark beneath the stones. They didn't grow well, but they grew. Coal rode less now. Town came to them. A rusted buckboard might roll up in the mornings, someone needing a calf birthed, a fence mended, a debt settled with hands instead of paper. Folks came slow, eyes cautious, but they came. She earned her place with sweat, and Cole watched her, more than he touched her, with the look of a man reckoning, not the kind that makes peace, the kind that waits to see if peace is even possible. By late August, the Caldwells were near forgotten. Until the fire. It came in the black of a new moon. Smoke slipped under the door like a whisper. Beulah woke coughing. The barn was already burning. Cole was outside before his boots were on. Beulah followed, wet rag over her mouth, dragging a pail. The blaze screamed. Flames curled around the rafters like fingers. Horses thrashed inside, and Cole didn't hesitate. He barreled into the smoke, rope in hand. Beulah ran for the pump. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She threw water like it was a weapon. By the time the sun rose, the barn was a skeleton, 3 horses dead, 2 saved. Cole's hands were raw to the wrist. He didn't speak all day. That evening, a note was found nailed to the gate. No name, just, "Next time it's the house." Beulah didn't wait. She rode into town before light the next morning, hitched the wagon outside the sheriff's office and walked in, jaw set like iron. Sheriff Dar was old, half-blind in one eye, and owed Cole for a time when blood needed cleaning and Cole hadn't asked why. "Help us," Beulah said, voice cold, "or step aside while I do it myself." The sheriff sighed. "No proof, Mrs. Maddox." "You don't need proof to warn a man. Rafe Caldwell has friends on the board." She lined in clothes. "So did Cole before he married me. Funny how fast they disappeared." Dar stared at her. She stared back. Then he stood and reached for his rifle. "I'll pay him a visit." Beulah nodded once, then walked down Main Street with her boots loud on the boards and every eye watching her pass. Not one laughed, not anymore. When she came home, Cole was cutting firewood with a rhythm that didn't stop. She took the axe from his hands, set it down, and kissed him with all the quiet they'd never allowed themselves. He held her like a man clutching something too heavy to carry, too precious to drop. "You ain't got to do this alone," he whispered. "I never did," she said. They buried the horses side by side, said nothing. They didn't name the one that had carried Maribeth once. Some things were better left behind. 3 nights later, Rafe Caldwell's barn burned. No witnesses. No trail. Nothing but smoke curling into the desert sky like a curse lifted. People guessed, no one said a word. Even the preacher didn't mention it from the pulpit. Fall came like a mercy, a brief greening, thunderheads in the distance, rumbling promises. Beulah's onions fattened. She planted more, squash, beans, wildflowers. Cole rebuilt the barn with thicker walls, steel reinforcements. The neighbors helped. One even brought nails. The Caldwells didn't show their faces. Rafe's older son was seen riding south toward the border not long after. The younger limped now and drank alone. Beulah was asked to speak at the ladies' luncheon. She declined. But when the doctor's wife gave birth 2 weeks early, it was Beulah who boiled the water, who cut the cord, who washed the blood from the sheets with hands that had once choked a man into the dust for calling her a mistake. She began to laugh again, small bursts like breaking glass. Cole started calling her B. Not to make her smaller, but to remind her she'd stung him awake. He cleared a field north of the pasture and built her a swing. She sat on it in the evenings, heavy, quiet, rocking slow while the dusk came. Sometimes he sat behind her, legs spread wide, holding the ropes in silence. Their love was not loud, it was not pretty. But it was real. And that was more than most. One night, as frost crept into the windows, she came to him with a letter in her hand. It was from her sister, back east. She hadn't spoken of her since the day she arrived. "Wants to visit," she said, voice unreadable. "You want her to?" Cole asked. Beulah looked away. "I want her to see me." Cole took the letter, then let her come. She stared at him a long while, then nodded. When the sister arrived, prim and tired, with the look of a woman used to pitying others, she took one step into the yard and stopped cold. Beulah stood barefoot in the soil, dress smeared with tomato vine, hair unbound. "This is your place?" the sister asked, soft. Beulah smiled. "It's mine and his. We made it so." That night over stew, the sister tried to find the right words, tried to ask how it happened, why it worked. Beulah answered without looking up. "He never wanted me smaller." Cole touched her wrist beneath the table. The sister left with more questions than answers. But she left knowing one thing. Beulah Maddox wasn't broken. She was built different, stronger than what tried to bury her. The winter that followed was cruel. Wind swept down from the mountains like punishment, stinging the eyes, turning breath to frost. Snow came sudden and stayed too long, blanketing the fields, muting the world. Roads vanished, horses lamed. Children took sick, and some didn't live past February. Beulah bore it like a stone bears water, slowly, but never breaking. She was thicker now, rounder in the middle. It happened quiet, like all important things did in her life. One morning she simply put a hand to her belly and knew. No joy, no panic, just a calm that settled low in her spine. Cole didn't ask when she told him. He only nodded, stepped outside, and sat on the porch for a long while. Then he built a cradle with his own hands, every nail driven with care, every joint sanded smooth. The child came early, near the end of March. She labored on her feet, refused the bed. Blood pooled around her boots, and the scream she gave shook dust from the rafters. The midwife, called in from 2 valleys over, said she'd never seen a woman fight that hard to stay upright while giving life. Cole held her up with both arms, face buried in her hair. She bit his shoulder, left a scar. The baby was born in silence, no cry at first, a heavy red thing, limp. The midwife froze, Beulah did not. She slapped the child once, firm. "Breathe," she said. And the baby did, wailed once, high and angry, and filled the room with the sound of living. A girl. Beulah named her Lark, not for sweetness, but for survival. Larks sing even in storms, larks nest in wild places, larks return. Cole wept for the first time in years, quietly, face turned toward the window so she wouldn't see. She saw. By the time the thaw came, Canyon Edge had changed. People began planting again. Men who'd once mocked Beulah now asked her how she kept onions through snow. The preacher's wife brought her tea, not charity. And Cole was offered a seat on the town board. He refused it, but the asking meant something. One afternoon they stood at the edge of their field, Lark bundled on Beulah's hip. The sun was hot, the kind of heat that promised crops. Cole traced the line of the new fence with his eyes. A hawk circled overhead. "You ever miss it?" he asked. "The life you thought you'd have?" Beulah didn't answer for a while. Then she shifted Lark to the other hip and stared out toward the far ridge where the train used to come. "I miss the woman I thought I had to be," she said, "not the life." He nodded, took her hand, rough palm to rough palm. Behind them the house stood strong, firewood stacked, porch repaired, flowers growing beneath the windowsill. It wasn't beautiful in the way catalog pictures showed, but it was real, weathered, built from sorrow and salt and the stubborn refusal to be pitied. Lark cooed, small hand, gripping the collar of her mother's dress. And Beulah smiled, not like a woman lucky, not like one blessed, but like someone who had earned every damned thing she held. News came months later that Rafe Caldwell had taken sick, drank himself into yellow sleep, liver rotted out, no funeral, just a notice nailed to the post by the mercantile. His sons had gone, one to Texas, the other disappeared into the mountains. No one mourned, no one came to claim his land. Cole said nothing when he heard, just took the notice, folded it once, and lit it on the hearth. Beulah watched it burn, then turned back to the stove, stirring stew, thick and rich with meat she'd raised herself. Lark sat near the fire, wide-eyed, holding a wooden spoon like a scepter. Outside, wind moved through the cottonwoods in long, low sighs, but no smoke rose from neighbors' barns. No hoofbeats approached in threat. The ground, hard as it was, no longer gave way beneath their feet. They had survived it. All of it. One night, years later, when Lark was 5 and stubborn, Cole told her a story about a woman who got off a train and built a kingdom from dirt. Beulah was outside, hanging laundry, sleeves rolled, forearms strong. When she came in, Lark looked up at her. "Mama," she said, "were you scared?" Beulah knelt beside her, pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Once," she said, "but only once." She stood, hands on hips, head high. "After that, the world got scared of me." That was the end of it, not the story, not the life, but the waiting. She had been abandoned in dust and found her way to fire. And she had not burned. She had become the flame.